So has this ever happened to you? You become part of an organization that is focused on changing your attitude. You've bought into the notion that if you change your attitude, you will be able to achieve a level of happiness, create a level of success. You make up in your mind that that's kind of the game, and so you start to move yourself into a process of self-improvement. So you go to these workshops, you attend developmental, opportunities, large seminars, these sorts of things. You go to them, and there's a lot of common interest about human power and the ability to attract great things into your life, and that if you think positive thoughts, it'll manifest, these sorts of things. And so I'm not a cynic, and nor am I a proponent of what I'm talking about. But I think at the very basic level, the underlying notion, the construct, is that human beings need power over life. They have a thought which is construed as either the friend or the enemy, and that our thoughts, which are born from the past, if we can think different, then we will change the conditions. So here we have a person who's going through a career, raising a family, creating a future. And then they have a range of moods. They feel good, they feel bad, but they get drawn into themselves when they run into the emotional muck. They feel the conflicts. And then something or someone comes along and says, if you just work on yourself, if you would change how you think about things, everything else will change for you. That stuff. Like the magic pill. And I've been coaching one-on-one leaders for the last 20 years. I've done 25,000 coaching sessions. That is the space that I do. That's all I do, and that's all I'm going to continue to do until I die. And along the way, one of my interests is looking at the field or looking at the movement of human potential that came out of the 70s and rose in the 80s into workshop organizations like Landmark Forum, LifeSpring, the Summit Organization, Psi Seminars. There were many, which I don't know all of them extensively. But they all had a basic common idea, a common thread, which is self-improvement is really at the center of creating change. Focus on oneself. And having now these 20 years and this experience and all the wisdom that comes with it, I've come to some very interesting claims. And one of those is that you as a person, to create what you want, don't need to focus on yourself. In fact, the more that you focus on yourself, the lousier creator in your life you will be. Because you'll go off and focus on all these things based on one underlying concept. That if something's wrong with me, then I am in my own way. I have self-inflicted issues, so I need to address my issues. And if I address my issues, the implication is I'll open the doors, the opportunities between where I am and what I want. The universe will get on my side. I'll be able to control events. Right? This is often a common construct. But the basic origin, the paradigm that governs the solution, which is to fix oneself, is that something's wrong with us. That's the beginnings, that's the origins of self-help. I'm a self that's broken. So who but a person that would want to be better, or to get up to the standard, or to bring myself to my needed level of confidence, or to get my self-esteem where I need it to be, would be someone who doesn't have it. Like saying, who but a person that is chanting or affirming to themselves that they're valuable is someone who thinks they're not. Who but a person that's constantly trying to see how they can get happy is someone who isn't. See, the attempt to market that idea to ourselves, to fix ourselves, it puts us in tune with the unwanted belief that we're not enough. We are inadequate. And therefore, we must become adequate. Someone sold us a bill of goods to say that our worth, what we deserve, is linked to what we desire. And so we set up our experiences to incline us to deserve what we expect, or to align the level of difficulty that we assign to things or we project on things. We ensure that that difficulty is there so that we've earned it. Betty Crocker did this in an advertising campaign years ago to homemakers, to mothers. And at first, they couldn't figure out why their pancake mix wasn't selling. And the reason why, two psychologists came in and figured out that by adding an egg to the quick making pancake mix, it gave mothers, the makers, a way to feel worthy of creating the pancakes. So the purchasing went up because a step was added to make it affirm one's own existence. Right? This is how powerful this is that in this case, in a market where mothers are being targeted by quick pancake mix, they changed their purchasing habits because another step was added. So it's an automatic belief. Now, when we bring it sort of conscious, when we bring this sort of concept or construct conscious, we can test it. So I'm wondering whether your opinion of yourself, whether you like yourself, love yourself, whether your relationship with yourself is a prerequisite for creating what matters to you. I'm going to make a claim. I don't think it does. And there's lots of schools of thought out there that have led you, a lot of hype, that have led you to believe that this school of thought really matters. So they'll put you in a room of people that agree on the same. It's very brainwashing. And that you're being led internally to look at your shit. You've got to look at your beliefs. You've got to look at your concepts as if you're doomed because of your conclusions that you've made up about yourself, about others, about the way things are. Where it misses for me isn't the introspection part, because I think there's a great merit in looking internally at some of our concepts, because those are very structural. They do play out in terms of patterns. But where it gets really unfortunate, where it starts to become something that doesn't serve people, the method, the model, the user, is that we try to attempt to change away from what we believe. We try to change the very belief that we have, or make believe something like positive thinking. And this is essentially positive lying. Right? We do not state accurately the way things are. Am I suggesting that we should be all realists? No. But if you ask a creator of art, a creator of a career, an entrepreneur who's creating a company, people who are in the arts, who focus on designing and bringing those designs, those creations into the world, they don't take the path of looking at themselves. They don't take a psychological lens to it. They just create. It's a process unto itself. They learn how to create what they're wanting by creating it. They start with nothing. They create separate from what they know. So anything that they think about themselves, whatever opinion they have of themselves, high, medium, low, whatever belief structures they have, whatever self-esteem levels they have, whatever they think they deserve, whatever expectations they have, that's not relevant to creating. And somewhere we've gotten indoctrinated in the human potential movement into looking there because someone didn't tell us a better way. And I'm not saying I have the answers. I don't want to be patriarchal and say, I have a better way. My worldview is better. Now, if you try on my worldview and forget changing yourself, you're going to suddenly become a better creator. What I am saying is that you don't need to do all that work. It's a lot more simple. See, and I think about a person that wants to create a restaurant. So they go through the process of conceptualization. They think about creating a restaurant. They consider if it matters to them or not. Desire. Desire is wanting something for the sake of it. Do I desire it or not desire it? Do I want it? This want is a generative love. It's very personal. It doesn't need my current situation to discern it. Thinking big and all that stuff is often chanted in a way of blocking unlimited thinking and all that. Think big and all that. And if you think bigger, it'll come and all that. Those are just notions. But they certainly are worth testing. And I like to. Because I wonder if we are trying to think big because we are afraid to think small. So we attempt to adjust or adapt our thinking on behalf of setting up the probability. I think the other piece of learning that's really key here is that optimism or pessimism really have no place to take in the creative process. It's not relevant. Predicting the future has nothing to do with creating. Forecasting, predicting, you can predict all you want, but the universe is a wild card. Can we get okay with that? Can we get okay with a future that is uncertain? Because a lot of what I see disguised as creating is trying to predict a future, control a future, trying to avoid the future from happening the way we worry about it, pessimism, or trying to imagine a future that's just a certain way so that we don't have to feel uncomfortable or scared, so we can conjure the courage and be able to put our willpower in the right gear and slay the dragon and overcome the obstacle. Doesn't last. Fear is a great thing. Fear is a great bouncer and companion. You know why fear is built into us when we create something new? Because we've never done it before. Fear is the thing that wants to keep our sanity. But I don't find a lot of leaders grateful for it. They think fear is really the impediment. It's not the impediment per se. It's the way they relate with it that's the impediment. Fear and fearlessness. Fearlessness is the ability to make contact with fear as it is, to be grateful with how much respect we have for ourselves, not to hurt us. We don't want to hurt ourselves. The good news is we care. If you didn't care about you, you wouldn't be afraid, especially doing something new. But we don't know how to relate with it. It just feels weird, or it feels like it's something we're always looking at what's around the corner. And so when we fall into reacting to it, and then we act and get governed by what we think is around the corner, we take steps to avoid it. This is problem solving. It's not creating. But what if we meet fear more directly? What if we treat it like an invited guest, a companion? I'm not trying to be glib. I know a lot of us, we literally, by going into something new, will pee our pants. That's real fear. Courage is what you do when your pants are wet. Is you have that courage, but courage is the word cour, or in the word courage, the root word is cour, which means in French corps, from the heart. Courage is to act instantly when the fear is there, or not. Do we need fear? Yes. What is the matter with doubt? What's the matter with self-doubt? This is a very good thing. Of course we have self-doubt. We're creating is bringing something to exist that doesn't exist yet. Of course we have self-doubts about it. The only way to believe in a creation is when we create it. But then we get too drawn into, do you believe in something? Whether you believe in it or not isn't relevant. You're learning how to create what you're creating by desiring it, deciding to create it, and then executing. You reflect. You gather your desire, you compose a decision, And then you act upon that decision with an open mind so that action can equal clarity. So you learn as you go. It's an iterative process. You will get things wrong. But no, wait a minute. I've got all these ideals. I've got all these unwanted opinions of myself. I've got to make up all these ideals I have to live up to. I wouldn't want to make those mistakes. I might look like a fool. That's right. You can't use failures as assets. We marry our identity to what we're trying to create. We take everything so personal that when we find things that don't go our way, rather than learning and gathering and appreciating and tweaking and making strategic decisions, we think it defines who we are. We are so preoccupied with who we are. Dogs aren't preoccupied with who they are. We're the only species on the planet that's preoccupied with our identity. And so, we get caught in the land of being somebody, of needing to justify our existence, of being noticed, getting approval, trying to find other people's opinions about us, seeing if we can belong. Because again, we think that because we have things about us, we have little thorns on the rose bush that we don't like, we must hide those things from the world, rather than coming by those qualities honestly. I've often asked coaching clients, why don't you just take an honest position on what you don't like about yourself, even what you hate about yourself? Look, you can't manufacture love. That would be phony. Why don't you just come by yourself honestly? Some of us just really don't like certain qualities that we have. Good. I'm glad that we get there. I'm glad that we get to that self-honesty where we can actually report to ourselves what's going on. See, when we do that, when we report to ourselves what's going on in our mind, what's going on around us, when we are doing good journalism to ourselves, we develop a sense of respect. Because with that information, we're giving our brain really good instructions on where we are compared to where we're trying to go. And naturally, our brain starts to work on resolving that gap. It's governed by nature. It's seeking resolution. The distance has energy to work with. But I guess the self-help people, those proponents, never really learned about these kind of ideas or these kind of structures, I suppose. So we're just so busy working on ourselves to no end, trying to figure ourselves out, taking everything personal. I love this one. I'm creating my reality. Everything I'm creating is my responsibility. Yeah. So we try to sort of pull one over on ourselves by saying, I created it. My subconscious must be out to get me. Right? It has an implicit intention. It's out to get me. It has this underground agenda that's here to create what I have now without my watch. Oh, I didn't catch myself on that one. I guess it got the best of me. I just attracted a bully who came out and just beat me up. Oh boy, that person that got out of their car and chased me down for having a twisted mind is my responsibility. And then we assign sort of metaphors to the mysteries, right? We try to figure out the existential stuff. Why are we here? We got to figure it all out because we crave having right answers. Why don't we just come to terms with how strong our desire is to crave the right answers? But creating the things that matter to us don't depend on all the answers. They don't need them. Creating is a personal school. Every single creation, goal, outcome that you bring into being is a learning process itself. You have to learn how to create what you want. You start with knowing what, and then you get into knowing how. But you don't put the knowing how first. You put the knowing what first. What do I really want? What's important to me? What do I want to create? And that creates a sense of involvement because now we're in the process of figuring out how. There's nuances. There's moments of truth. Things work. Things don't work. We try it this way. There's experimentation. But we're working within this desired state, these conditions that we want to create and bring into being. Now, some of the things I'm talking about, if you've been involved in human potential thinking or you have some of it in your software, I might really push some buttons in you. You might feel strong opinions about what I'm saying. It's good. I'm getting you to think. I'm not asking you to change your opinions about those things. It's great that you want to be a better person. It's great that you have a high standard of yourself. It's wonderful that you want to create different conditions in your life. And so too, what I'm doing is I'm giving you another perspective. I want to open your eyes a bit to where you can look and where you can make a few shifts in positioning yourself to create the goals that matter to you. And that would start with knowing what matters to you. And knowing what matters to you is nothing to do with who you are or what you think you can earn or how much you believe in yourself or anything. Don't make it about you. Put your orientation, your focus on what you're trying to create, not you. You're separate from your creations. The artist is not the canvas. The canvas is the canvas when the painter is painting the painting. That way the painter has a objective perspective. No different than making a bouquet. You're focusing on the end result. You're looking at the current things you have. You're putting the bouquet together. You're making tweaks and turns. Some things work, some things don't. Then you bring your creation to a final stage. You complete it. And then you probably give it to someone you love, the bouquet. So, how do you make decisions? Where do you start by making your decisions? What if you started with what really matters to you? What if it started there? What if you wrote down everything right now that's in your life, take stock, look around you, and actually confront yourself with what you're doing, where you are, who you're with, the places you're going, the job you have, the material things you own, the dwelling you have, the relationships that are there. These are some things. And then ask yourself, what really matters to me? See, you can start off with the things that already are here and kind of get a sense of, by knowing, coming to yourself honestly, what is it that does matter to you? Because not everything has equal meaning. And that's okay to admit. It doesn't mean you're too good for anything. If you're saying to yourself, oh, well, I need to make choices, well, that would indicate that I'm too good for something. Get your identity out of it. It's not that you're too good for anything. You're not comparing yourself. You're not equaling yourself to reality or so forth. You're not dominating and submitting life to you. Come on. What you're doing is identifying what's in your heart, what you really care about. And that's just simply communicating to yourself what you really care about. You really care about a few things. What do you really care about? What really matters to you? And maybe there's things going on in the world right now in a larger context that matter to you. There's subject matter, topics. There's stories that are going on around you that if you kind of put your attention there, place your perception there and listen, you might hear something. You might just awaken something in yourself that calls you, that asks you for something different, that moves you in spirit, because something is moving you. Yes. When you pay attention to how you pay attention, when you look at what's around you, when you start to slow down and actually process or listen what's really going on around you, you pick up on different cues and clues and signals. It's like you put together the narrative. Something becomes very informing, onboarding almost. When I heard that 3 people in the world were murdering themselves, suicide, compared to 1 at the hands of another, that informs me in a great way. That to me is a spiritual crisis. That connects with who I am and the work I do in the world, and that connects with a possibility, with a wonder, with a possibility that I'd love to bring to life. It may not require just me. It may mean a whole tour de force community. It may mean a whole group of people that care a lot about this and want to see changes. So we're not talking about deconstructing or moving something out. We're talking about architecture, bringing something in, causing change, creating something, taking responsibility, not waiting until it's given. And that means that you do not construct out of your power. Rather, you construct out of what you really care about. See, whether you're capable or not of creating something is not the prerequisite for deciding to create it. You just start where you are. You take reference. You get a baseline. Some things you're great at, some things you're not, but you come by yourself honestly. So, does it need to be believable? No. Do you need to be capable? No. Is it helpful to know some of your strengths? Yes. Might you need to acquire new skills and abilities? That's the whole point. Grow. You're going to change. Is it about changing your mindset? Only the mindsets that are directly in the way of creating what you want, but otherwise, make working on yourself a hobby. Do you need to have extraordinary clarity in order to create what you want? No. Ask any creator who's created anything, even famous people. They didn't start with some crystal clear, unbelievable holy grail idea where they got stunned with a Moses moment and went, oh, wow, I see the light. Wow, boy, this is great. Now I'm so clear. Now I'm going to actually make it happen. Level of clarity and chances for success are not connected. You become clearer by prototyping, by taking action, by putting it in, taking it out, trying something, moving it around, learning by what you're doing. Action creates clarity. So we're dispelling some of these myths. You don't need to deserve what you desire. You don't need to assume you have a bunch of power or capability. You don't. You can choose to be the predominant creative force in your life. That's a fundamental decision. And that means essentially you're changing your orientation from organizing out of circumstances by reaction and response to a more creative orientation. Creating what really matters. Creating can be a way of life. Creating relationships. These can be very, very lasting, satisfying things that you're involved in the process of creating. Some come soon, some don't. I've had projects that have lasted years. So some of the outcomes you learn while creating your creations. Some happen on time and some don't. Every creation is its own universe. We create the universe, the creation, and then, of course, we live in it. And so the universes of our creations that exist, it's really neat when you're a creator, when you compose like a creator, because you live in those universes after they come into the world. If you create a business, you live in that business. You create a home, you live in that home. You create a relationship, a marriage, you live in that marriage. You create a relationship with your children, you live there. You live in the creations you create. It's one of the most beautiful parts of having a creative habit in your life or a creative orientation. And then, of course, letting go of a ton of heaviness of having to work on you. Let go of the notion that something's wrong with you and needs to be fixed. Letting go of trying to make yourself happy at every moment. You can change your attitude, you can clear up your attitude, you can clean up your issues, and still not create what you want. I mean, that's the basic message here, is working on yourself and self-improvement, make it a hobby, but make really creating what matters to you the centerpiece of your life. Is it about being selfish? Not at all, because a lot of the urges, in fact, most of the urges that we humans have, we're very good-natured. We're very wise at the core. We're deeply afraid. We're very lazy. And we get so busy sometimes, I think we get caught in the protection of being busy, that we're so busy being busy to do what could make us a lot less busy. And we fear taking an inventory of things where we are because we might have to change something. We don't like the truth. And one of the most important components in the skill building of creating is the ability to report what's true to yourself. It's a fundamental choice to be true to you, to be true to your heart, to your desires, to what matters, but also true to reporting to yourself what's really going on, your feelings, your thoughts on the internal side, and to be separate and objective from those. You're not your emotions, nor are you your material things. You're not your car. You're not what other people think. You're not what you do. None of it. It's all folly. It's all story. It's all myth. So let go of the attempt to work on your identity. Even famous people that use the creative process, you know how they use fame? They use it on behalf of making a difference, of doing the things that they want to create. They don't seek fame to be somebody because they're insecure. The real professionals, they build fame as a function, as a means, as a helper to build the creations that really matter to them in the world. It's an additive. It's an accelerator, but it's not an end goal. In money buys time. Money's very helpful, and when you have it, things certainly get a little easier. I think we would all agree on that, right? I found that to be true, is that when we don't have it, things get a little tougher. But when we do have it, we can get more discretionary about our decisions. And so money is not the end of not the end result, right? It's the function. You put it into how. It's all part of the function of building what you want to create, especially in business. Businesses, they're there to be profitable, but if they're profitable, they can fund their purpose. Purpose is the engine. That's the armature, the horsepower of the business. And how we maintain it is by making the profits to fund it, to support our purpose. Yes. So here you are. You're right here, right now. You're listening to me. And you're hearing about some of the things I'm reflecting on about. I'm distinguishing hype. I'm talking about where you might have been looking, where you think you may need to make some changes, or friends have made it clear, or you've picked up a book recently that is very human potential oriented about how you can awaken the powers within. The supermind can wake up. Suddenly you can call on powers that you didn't have before. I mean, when you think about a person who has created the lasting success, the things they really loved, they wanted, they brought those things into the world, they weren't thinking about this. It wasn't like they went into this mode where they had to sort of, Control, Alt, Delete, and they had to reform themselves, and they went into a whole process of, reshaping and all this stuff. They didn't work on themselves. They focused on creating what they wanted, and they built competencies to be able to bring that into reality. It was a skills-based process. There's a lot of really screwed up people that have learned how to play the piano. There's a lot of really twisted minds that have created wonderful art. There's a lot of athletes that are not perfect people that have all sorts of flaws. There's all sorts of music that has all sorts of funks in it and things that didn't go well that made it authentic. If we didn't allow for those things, we wouldn't see what's beautiful. We wouldn't see that's the one-of-a-kind thing that you are. To be flawed. You have a lot of flaws. You are very incomplete. We are all perfectly broken. We are never quite complete. And so if we focus our lives on completing ourselves, we're going to miss out on all the glory of creating creations in our life and making contributions. And boy, does the world need more creative force of hearts that really care about something, that want to make an impact, especially on a collective level. Because, creating is a sport. Creating is a process that has at times great difficulty. And so it requires an intestinal fortitude, a certain tolerance, which we in our culture just don't have a high degree of. We haven't been through a lot of crisis like some other cultures. We're not as tolerant. We don't have the humanity in us. We don't have all that suffering in us like others that have fought wars on their soil and their front lines and have had huge calamities and traumas. We don't have that. And so how do we make up for that? Well, we have an open heart. We're all very empathic human beings. So part of it is just taking account that we don't. But it doesn't mean that we are disqualified in any way of creating creations we love. And so it means we start by asking the question, what do I want to create? And then, what do I have now in, all honesty, relationship, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in relationship to what I want to create? And those two things in juxtaposed to each other start a very powerful tension, kind of like an archer, where between the two sides of the bow, there's tension, right? There's propulsion for the arrow. And as we form that, we learn how to hold tension over long periods. Because current reality is an acquired taste. A lot of times what we currently have is so at odds with what we want, we have to learn how to use that distance as energy to work with. But sometimes we get into despair and frustration and setbacks. And so in our life as a creator, we must learn how to assimilate. Kind of like riding a bike, we have to pedal fast enough while we're trying to balance the bike to keep ourselves moving forward. So we go through foolish stages. We start with seeding stages of creations we want to create. And then we get better. And then our level of determination backs off. And our level of skill kind of takes over. Because people that are really good at what they do, they don't need determination. You've seen that in sport. At the very, very top, they play at such a high level because of their self-knowledge. They know their talents. That's not arrogance. That's just taking an objective perspective, being talented to be talented. We don't have to focus every gift we have. There's nothing in the rule books that says that we should create what we're gifted at. I mean, that's a Nice idea, because we might think, well, because I'm going to create what I'm already good at, that means it's going to be easier. But I've seen a lot of people make terrible compromises by just focusing on their strengths. The old notion of strength focusing has its limits. If we only organized ourselves into things that only our strengths could do, that's a recipe for boredom. That means eventually all we're going to do is take on challenges connected to our skills. When we take on challenges that are bigger than our skills, we bring our skills up. We're challenged with learning how. And the how is the joy in the creative process. That's the pleasurable involvement, the motivation of bringing something we care about into the world. Knowing where we are, not where we should be, but where we are. And where we are is substantial enough. All we have to do is report that to ourselves. And then take a next step or action in service to what we want. So some people would say, well, I don't have the discipline. Well, I don't have enough discipline. Well, yes, you do. We all have the same amount of discipline. We are 100% disciplined to our habits. So the point is, you're probably describing you don't have creative habits. Your habits are response. You're reactionary. Your habits are taking care of your to-do list, the busy work. Your habits are wasting your time on things that are minors, not majors. Those are habits. We're all 100% committed to our own habits. We're disciplined to our own habits. We all have the same amount of discipline. You don't need more discipline. What are you going to do? You're going to go to some, like a booster shot? Are you going to go get your injection of discipline somewhere? You're going to suddenly find your dose? You're going to charge yourself up to get that kind of discipline, get all that get-go going in you? You hang out for a weekend and stand on a chair and feel like you can tackle the world so that you're not scared of your goals. So you've built yourself up, which wears off right away, rather than really building on a skill you didn't have before, coming by yourself to know that you have some things that are lacking. That doesn't disqualify you. That just gives you a starting point, a baseline. It's kind of exciting. So when the guy asked me, should I create a restaurant? I'm going to go to school. I said, why would you go to school? I said, why don't you start learning how to create a restaurant by creating one? Yeah, he kind of said, well, that's the idea, isn't it? Of making a decision. Yeah. I said, how do you make decisions? He said, well, I used to make them by what I know. And I said, well, what if you made decisions outside what you know? And he said, well, that's like being conceptually kind of less limited. And I said, well, limit or not, I said, it's just a different place from which you make your decisions. You really care about something, therefore you create it. And you can decide or not decide to create the things you care about. Or maybe you identify something you don't care about, but you create it anyway. The point is you have range, fluency, depth, span. I know that when I create things that matter, there's a terrific kind of involvement that I get. And during those involved moments, time seems to warp. It's like I'm going inside and into the creative process, and time just passes so different. You've probably noticed that when you're narrowing your focus and concentrating on something you want. Time is experienced differently. All of a sudden, the moment is a point of reference. We step back. We look at what works and doesn't. We develop an innate sense of how to work with things, like how to insert things that work and things that don't, make changes, try it this way. We hold the tension. We instinctively can do this. We just don't know what we know. We've kind of forgotten looking in all the human potential stuff, trying to build ourselves up, trying to deserve what we want, trying to get more clarity, trying to get more confidence. And then, of course, we're faced with a sense that we're powerless. And so, we attempt to get what we want. And then we say, well, when we were young, our childhood said, well, don't wish for it because you might not get it. And so we preemptively strike and we avoid it. We kind of lower our vision and we compromise, all those sorts of things. We don't have to fall prey to that. You just be aware of it. But there's nothing to change there. You can build a whole new, adequate, different structure. You can have a whole different place from which you motivate your actions. What do I really want? What do I actually have? Those are ongoing discoveries, conversations. But you're always articulating those things to yourself. And then what do I need to do now on behalf of what I want to create? I mean, those are kind of your cues. What else is there? There's creations. So you keep creating creations. It's a way of life. Create music. It's not obligatory. Music you don't create out of obligation. You create it because you love the music and you want it to exist. So you create the music. What if all the subject matter in your life had that motivation? Right now. What do I really want to create? What do I really care about? People learn by creating things they really care about. That's how they learn best. And we need useful human beings. We do. We need you. We need useful human beings. Human beings that identify creations they really care about, because they tend to do extraordinary work when they do. They get a lot of energy spiritually, and they give a great deal of help and usefulness and capability to our society when they're involved in creations that they love, because it always affects people more profoundly. I'm sure you've been around someone that really cares about something, or you've walked into a business and you know they really care about the food they're serving. You can taste it. Or you care about, it's like you look at the office environment and you know these people, the way they're operating, the way they're knocking into each other, the way they're collaborating. Their whole energy is based on something they collectively care about. You can tell. There's a vibe in the air. You know when a great sports team has come together all in one direction because of a direction they really care about. And they have a process of iteratively building their capabilities on behalf of that direction. In some way, when you hold it this way, I don't know how it works, but destiny sort of works on behalf of what you put together here. Things happen. You meet the right person. There's coincidences that happen. There's mystical experiences. It's like turning on a light. I don't know how that works. I can't explain to you how a light bulb works. I just turn it on. So when you start to compose out of a desired state and you consistently benchmark where you are compared to that, things begin to happen naturally. I think tension seeks resolution naturally. I can't say that that's how things will happen daily, right? I haven't experienced it that way, but they do tend to prevail and precipitate. So I ask you this question. We're getting towards the final minutes here. I hope you hear me loud and clear. And my encouragement and invitation to you is to let some of those ideas, those old ideas, go about you and not being enough and trying to change what you believe and work on yourself and change your attitude, all that. You don't have to emphasize that. Make it a hobby. Self-improvement is a hobby. Focus on creations. Live in a creative orientation. Build your decisions around what does matter to you. Sit down right now and take stock of what matters to you most in your life. Then number it. Identify your hierarchies of importance from the inside out. Organize your decisions. Look at your yeses and your nos. What are you saying yes to that you shouldn't? It doesn't matter to you. Or what are you saying no to that you should because you're afraid? And rather, these may be things that in order to really get what you really want, you have to do a few things that you hate doing. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be easy or that you have to like it. If that was the standard, it wouldn't be creating. You'd be mediocre. You would lower your vision to the difficulty level. Whether difficult or easy, both are in the process. The point is you're creating the creation and you've chosen to create it. And that the processes where things aren't really happening or you're learning how are periods of assimilation that you welcome to establish this tension, to continuously establish what you need to learn and assimilate to bring where you are to where you want to be. And you can build, and you can create, and you can generate. It's an extraordinary method of achievement. In fact, it's the most extraordinary method in the history of civilization. So I invite you into your life as a creator to be the artist and to make the subject matter of your life the subject matter of the creative process. My name is JD. I'm at High Level Performance. They call me the VIP coach. I coach one-on-one leaders in 4 areas: personal performance, enterprise growth, whole life integration, and social development. We help leaders integrate all 4 into a level of prosperity, into a way of being in the world as a creator, relating with others in such a way that they make a big impact, and they learn how to receive. They get great rewards for going out in the world and being more productive and profitable and creating more value for their communities. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you get yourself coached. Great leaders are coached. We are at 714-375-6624 or find us online at highlevelperformance.com. Thank you.